This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Hello and welcome to Roots and All. This week I'm talking to Sonia Copeland Bloom. Sonia is a children's author, and I think she may object to this term, but she is a wildlife expert. And we talk about her passion for bringing the natural world to life for young readers. We talk about wildlife, storytelling, and the importance of getting children curious about the creatures and wild places right on their doorsteps.
Well, I was born in India. My father was a doctor there. My parents were Irish and English. And I came over to England when I was about 4. And I just always loved being outside. I always loved nature. And when I was 7, I decided with my dad, we went for a walk, and I said, what should I be when I grow up? He said, to be a writer. Why not be a writer? You have your factory in your head. So I went to, because my parents were abroad a lot, I went to boarding school, Godolphin School in Salisbury, and still loved, everything to do with nature and being outside. And then I trained as a journalist because I thought that was the best idea. So I was a journalist for a long time, an editor, etc. And it was just really when I retired from quite a busy life, because I also ran a language school in Canterbury, I decided to be a children's nature writer, and that triggered me off. And I was blissfully, absorbed with learning about all these little mini beasts that I loved so much, and would always hunt them down as a child.
Perfect. So that's your grounding in writing. And obviously you always had that interest in nature. Did you have any formal training in entomology?
Well, not so much formal, but I was an elected member of the Royal Entomology Society, and I was always backed very early on from the Amateur Entomology Society as well. And I went on days there, but, I read an awful lot. And, I'd go for days there and learned a lot from being involved in all these rather important societies. And they loved my work because a lot of these societies weren't quite sure how to get children interested in entomology from the earliest possible age. And then suddenly I popped up, and they all sort of welcomed me very much and liked my work. And so I was very, very involved with all the, big people in these, with the Royal Entomology Society. And I was made I was given the odd honour, a lifelong honorary member of the Amateur Entomology Society, and I became an elected member of the Royal Entomology Society. And I met all these real big experts and went to lots of lectures and things. So I couldn't help just absorbing as much as I possibly could. I wanted to be a journalist, so I wouldn't have done biology at the university, I don't think. But if you looked at my shelves here, it's just books and books and books about entomology and bugs and insects and everything. So I made sure that I knew a fair amount, but there's still an awful lot to learn, because they're amazing creatures, these things.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know the half of it, really, do we, about what exists alongside us?
No, but it is amazing, especially their pheromones and how they connect with each other and communicate with each other and things, I think what comes out in my stories, which I was told, is very unusual, is when the child reads the story, they also absorb real facts. I had this ability to write stories that were sort of believable for the mini beast. It wasn't a mini beast going up to the theatre or anything like that. It was a mini beast that, like ladybirds, that they had adventures in this garden, in the Hornby family garden, which is a very suburban, so everybody's garden type thing. And so, I brought in, wasn't difficult for me at all, but I brought in real facts with the characterization and the events and the excitement of the story and that sort of thing. Everything was, because otherwise the Amateur Entomology Society and the Royal Entomology Society wouldn't have applauded them as they did. That's why they really advertised them and were very pleased, with the stories because of that fact. And, and then at the end of each story, you see there was the wonderful world of woodlice, all about woodlice, is a factual thing which the boys liked very much, particularly and then the amazing world of beetles. So there's a lot about beetles after the story. After each story, there was this beautiful world of butterflies, a lovely world of ladybirds, and fascinating facts about slugs. I brought in slugs because I know they're so unpopular, and I just wanted to give them a little fillip, and because actually they're pretty useful in a garden as well. But they don't know that you don't want them to eat your favourite flowers or whatever. So you can take steps to stop them doing that, But you can't expect them to just know that. So, and then the awesome world of earthworms. I mean, earthworms, Charles Darwin said they are the most valuable creatures in the world. And they probably are, because without them, we wouldn't have, the turning of the soil for trees and plants and everything is absolutely crucial. Why do we have nothing in the deserts? Because there aren't any earthworms.
Obviously, the earthworms are kind of famous and so useful. And then you did a PR campaign on behalf of the slugs, which is great, I think. How did you pick the other mini beasts that you wrote about?
I'm not sure why I picked them. I just thought they had potential. When you pick up a pot in the garden, we've got lots of pots in our garden. If you pick it up, there is the woodlouse family, mother, father, and hundreds of little kids, and they are a real family. And the actual woodlouse mother is heralded as the best mother in the insect world, because she has a pouch. And so the babies come through the pouch. And she's really a brilliant mother, and they do have loads and loads of children. But they also roll up in a ball, you see, to protect themselves. So what I wanted to do was to find some way, like Woodney the woodlouse suddenly found he couldn't roll up into a ball and keep himself safe. And this was a terrible tragedy for him. And all the other woodlouse were trying to sort of see how they could help him, rub him with this and that and the other. And he went away and he helped somebody. It was a spider, actually. He helped somebody. In doing so, he became very energetic. And suddenly he could roll into a ball. So each story, when I chose a mini beast, I wanted to make sure that it would make a story so that the children would learn from the story as well. They'd enjoy the story and the emotional side and that sort of thing. But they'd also learn all about it. And, boys particularly liked facts. So my books are very much fact fiction. And each story, is a sort of exciting story, hopefully, but it's full of facts and fiction so that the child will know about them when they've read the story.
Yeah, and also, obviously, you've done a lot of book learning and you've been to the lectures and everything. Did you do a lot of observation as well when you were researching the mini beasts?
Yes, I've always been out in the country and I love going for walks in woods. We've got a lovely wood near us. So I think I've always, whenever I've gone for walks, I've always stopped and turned over a log and seen what all these creatures so busy, So ever since I was a child, I was always looking for and enjoying mini beasts and finding out all about them. And then, of course, I did do a lot of, these days on the internet, you can do a lot of research as well. And also I had David Lewis, who's the president of the Amateur Entomology Society, which I would like to stop here and just encourage so many children to belong to the AES, it's called Amateur Entomology, because they have lovely days out when, and I went on these days out and we all went bug hunting. So bug hunting was definitely a part of my life, and particularly, once people were interested in my book and what I was doing, and they really had been searching for a way to interest children into learning about mini beasts. And so they were very, very encouraging to me, which was a great honour for me, really. So, I was, even today, we've got quite a big garden, and I love looking for the latest little mini beasts around. I used to keep them for pets as well, as pets. So I'd have a ladybird. I'd just keep it for about a week so I could observe it. And then a beetle and things. And I remember going to schools and I took lots of little mini beasts, including a slug and a worm. And I said to the children, who would like to hold a worm or slug? And they all raised their arms enthusiastically, me. And the staff around, when they saw these worms in crawling up, or these slugs crawling up their children's arms. They were horrified, but the children just loved them, and I loved going to really, creches and primary schools and talk to them. And, every time I do that, I'm learning the whole time. I wouldn't say I was the world's expert, but, my library is huge, and I'm always looking up everything to make sure I have it correct. Being correct is very, very important to me. And that's why the Amateur Entomologist Society, they always looked and helped me with my books, the stories. And I said, look, I want all the facts to be believable and to be so correct. And they helped a lot with that, So being factually correct was very important to me, and still is, in fact.
And you mentioned, the keeping of the bugs for, a little while so that you can kind of get to know them. And what I liked about your stories is that you also bring in the family, the Hornby family. And
Yes.
That's kind of quite important, I think, to see that interaction between the children and the adults and how they kind of manage the garden and how everybody learns as they go along. So it's good that they've got a presence in the book. It's not just the mini beasts.
Yes, no, I absolutely agree. And it was important, that the whole situation was in a live garden, of an ordinary suburban family like anybody's garden, really. And so that the kids reading it and things could say, well, I've got only a little garden, but, you don't have to have a big garden to find a lot of little insects, as you probably realise, And so I agree, that was very, very important, the Hornby family. And I hope the age range sort of went over, because, I think little Lizzie, she was about 5, I think. But as I wrote the books, I had to change their ages and get them a bit older. But they spanned from 5 to about 9.5, 10, because I think that although the stories are for the younger child in a way, I think the children have liked them so much, the older children have liked them. In primary schools, they tell me that because of the factual side and the fact that there's quite a lot to learn from. After all, beetles have been on Earth for something like 300 million years, These insects and mini beasts have been in the world far, far, far longer than us. And we should realise that.
And the other good thing about it, I think, is that the adults are learning, and particularly, I think there's a gardener at one point who disrupts a log pile and things like that. But
Yes.
It's good because the adults are also learning how to manage the garden. I'm assuming you manage your garden for wildlife.
Oh, yes, I do. We've got lots of little mini beast houses and that sort of thing, and plants that they would like, And so, yes, we've got so many bushes and trees and things in our garden that there's somewhere for all of them.
Why is it so important for you to educate children about the natural world?
I think it was vital. It's what drove me, because I feel very, very strongly that a child that's introduced to nature from a very early age is going to grow up as a much more responsible adult, who will take care of our world, which is under threat, really, for the future. There's many, many people that are very worried about the future of the world. And a lot of people don't really care about nature and things. And, look at the way the forests are being chopped up, and there's so many, problems going on. And so I felt, look, a child that is brought up with nature is going to be a better and more responsible child. And also, what could be better than going outside for children? Go outside and playing in the garden, or, climbing trees and splashing through streams and, all this stuff that used to be done before they were sort of mesmerised by their phones. And perhaps, I don't know about television these days, but, it's so important for children, to enjoy nature, to be out there. And it's very, very important for their mental health, as well as their physical health, and for running around and being sporty as well. Children actually, I think they naturally love the natural world and going into gardens. Not very many children don't, unless they're glued to television, of course. But going into the outdoors is very important. Anybody who's a bit miserable, if they go out for a walk in the country, they're going to come back much happier and probably problem solved, the outdoors has a tremendous impact on us all, and it's far more important, really. I mean, if all the humans disappeared, the world would flourish, with nature. But if the world didn't flourish any longer with nature, everybody, would die. So, there's nothing more important to me, it should be to everybody, than nature. And encouraging children to learn about it from the very earliest age. And I'm absolutely positive they will become more responsible and better and healthier mentally and physically than most children that don't go outside and that's stuck inside, with their phones. I mean, phones are incredible, aren't they? I mean, the way that so many children are sort of locked in their phones, you see them. And wherever you go nowadays, you see people, they're all fiddling around with their phones, so whatever anybody can do to get children to enjoy nature, I think they do a very good thing.
I agree. Also, you have children of your own and you've been working with children through your writing. Have you personally witnessed a kind of disconnect from nature?
Oh, yes, a lot. I see children everywhere. If I go to a school or something, they've all got their phones and things. But I have been giving talks to primary schools and to creches, with young children. And when I've left, the staff have rung me sometimes and said, the moment you left, everyone rushed out, wanted to rush out into our garden and searching in the hedges and woods and things like that, which pleased me very much, I think a lot of people in this world are very, very worried about the lack of interest children have for the outdoors and people have for the outdoors. And it's such a beautiful place, our nature. And I think that much more should be done to encourage them, I just want parents to sort of know that, and that's why I wrote the book as well, because I wanted children's parents to read the books and read the factual things and encourage their children, to love nature.
Well, that's it. I was just going to actually jump back to kind of how the book is structured, because you have the story, so people buy into the mini beasts. They almost fall in love with them. They're so touching, the mini beasts and their stories. And then after that, you follow that on with facts, which is such a good way of doing it, because
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, that's lovely that you've absorbed that. That was what I intended. And also, if you did notice that most of the chapters, they have a foreword by an expert. And the whole book starts with Sir David Attenborough anyway, And then there's David Lewis, who runs the Amateur Entomologist Society. He's done an editorial foreword. And Dr. Martin Warren, he's an absolute 100% expert on butterflies. He did an editorial foreword, And Helen Roy is very well known in the end. She was president of the Royal Entomology Society because she's an expert on ladybird. So she wrote an editorial foreword for the book. Emma Sherlock, she's president of the Earthworm Society. I know her pretty well. She loved the story and she wrote also a foreword. So I've got expertise in the book as well as the facts. They wouldn't have written the foreword if they hadn't appreciated what I was doing, and the fact that it was correct and factually correct and encouraging children, as we all want to do.
And I'm going to ask my final question, which is, do you have a favourite mini beast that you've written about?
Well, probably the ladybird, because it's so tame, and you can pick up a ladybird, it crawls up your arm, and I kept one for a pet for a week or two, But otherwise, I love them all, really, and I know that they all have a very special role to play in our world. And I just want to shout out to everybody, understand that and realize that this world could not exist without mini beasts. And that's what I like to get across that to the world, that they are probably the most important thing in the world. You couldn't have a tree without an earthworm aerating the roots, The desert doesn't have any trees, does it? Because there's no earthworms in a desert. So, they are so important, and I want children from the earliest age to realize that and appreciate it and go and hunt for them. I've kept quite a few minibees as pets, years ago, because I don't like to keep them for too long, but I love when I'm gardening, seeing them. Sometimes I talk to them and tell them how much I appreciate them. Yeah. I think they're lovely, and I want children to. There was a mother that was screeching because there was a caterpillar. She said, "Be careful, child, because of a caterpillar." And all entomologists believe that that's the most wonderful miracle of the world. How can a little stubby caterpillar with little hairs and everything, not terribly pretty, it builds its own chrysalis where it stays for 5 or 6 weeks or whatever, and out crawls the most stunning butterfly with all those colours. They're all made of tiny little feathers. What could be more beautiful than a butterfly? It's an absolute miracle when you think about it. And I'd love everybody to realise that when they see a butterfly, realise what it's gone through. I mean, how is it? They're all mashed up. A caterpillar mashes itself up and out come, this beautiful butterfly. It's an amazing miracle. In fact, the natural world is full of amazing miracles, and the sooner everybody realises that, the better.
Thanks to Sonia for sharing her love of wildlife and stories, and for reminding us how important it is to get children curious about the natural world. If you enjoyed today's episode, you might also like episode 76, School Gardening with Mini Horts, and episode 343, Lines Across the Wild. You'll find links to both in the show notes, and as always, thank you for listening. Next up is Benny with his insect of the week.
The rock rose prickly leaf beetle, scientific name Diclydispa testacea. So my insect of the week this week is the rock rose prickly leaf beetle. Quite a mouthful, but a lovely little beastie. This is a new species to Britain. We believe it was, first recorded in a garden in Surrey in 2022. This little leaf beetle is about 5 millimeters long. It's quite a mad little one. So let's talk about the etymology. Its genus Diclydispa comes from Greek, dikleidos, meaning kind of two branches or shoots, and that's relating to the spines, these black spines it has on its back. Hispidus comes from Latin apparently, and that's meaning kind of shaggy or prickly. The epithet, the second word is testaceous, comes from testaceous, which is Latin for brick-coloured or earthen-coloured. So the beetle itself is kind of like an orangey brown colour, brick colour. I like that though. That's a good descriptor. And has these black spines, little black spines. The whole thing's only 5 millimeters long, so they are small. But when you get a close-up look at them, they're pretty spectacular. This is a Mediterranean species, like most of the cistus we know. Cistus or rock roses, assuming most people know this plant group. Quite widely used in gardens and probably landscape now in bigger projects. So I really do quite like a cistus. It could be quite good for climate change. This is a new species that's arrived, which is a herbivorous insect. And at the minute, it seems to be innocuous. It's regarded as a non-pest-like introduction. There's no actual understanding as to how it got here, but usually these things come via the plant trade. So moving plants around, and you've got species already within that plant material. So you never know the impact of these things really until it's too late almost. But in its home range, you'd imagine that something would predate it, and thereby keeping it in check. In the UK, it's unlikely that it will have the thing that would predate it. It's possible, but it's quite unlikely. So that's where you do get issues with something that will eat a plant on a non-native, gets introduced at some point, intentionally or otherwise, and then that plant starts to be eaten in large amounts. In this case, I'll talk about how it gets eaten. But you never know if you haven't got the predator level to keep that pest or herbivorous insect in check, then you're just not going to know the impact really. So far it's deemed as a innocuous and unharmful introduction. I really like them. They look cute. And they're a fascinating new species to come along with a plant that probably didn't have a lot, if anything, eaten it beforehand. So 5 millimeters long, not exactly big. The adults will eat the outer tissue of the host plant leaves. The larvae, so the young, the grubs, they're the ones that actually will eat tissue within the leaves. So they act as leaf miners. And if you've not heard that term before, quite a lot of small moths, micro moths and flies and midges, there's all sorts of stuff. Beetles will be leaf mining. So their larvae, the adults will lay an egg just kind of inside the tissue. And then the young grubs, the larvae, will then internally leaf mine or burrow within the leaf structure. So they're feeding inside the leaf structure to kind of build up their body mass before they turn into the adult form. It can leave these kind of brown, blotchy leaf mines on the leaves. Some species leave very spectacular leaf mines and they're really beautiful. If you look at rose leaves this time of year. But all sorts of stuff happening within leaves. These are the kind of the smaller creatures of the world usually. And this is a leaf mining non-native species that survives on our non-native rock roses, which potentially is exciting. As we say, the impact is only deemed as a innocuous or potentially positive one at this moment in time. So I found them in all sorts of places in the last year or two now. I first was told about it by the ecologist Connor Butler last year, and I went looking, saw a load of them in Brockwell Park in London. This year, every place I look at them on Sisters, I'm finding them. So in Westminster, near St Thomas's Hospital, in London Bridge, and the planting around there. And even the Natural History Museum found one a few weeks ago. Well, found quite a few on their new climate change garden. So if you look at Sisters or rock roses right now, you may well see these tiny little beasties. And they're new to Britain, so they are an exciting find. As always, do try to record your sightings on iRecord and iNaturalist. This species is not currently listed on iRecord, but it should be at any point soon, so do keep a note of your record. Hope you see one.
You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.